Warning, this content may be disturbing to some audiences. Subscribe. If you dare.
I objected at my cousin's wedding. Hey everybody, welcome to ANECDOSED. People ask Reddit. Have you ever witnessed a wedding objection? What was it like?
Number 1.
I was a wedding photographer about 20 years ago and the other guy showed up and holy shit, I have never seen a group of groomsmen beat the hell out of one guy like that. Then the bride and groom went somewhere with the priest and the maid of honor came out and announced that the company was welcome to enjoy the meal at the reception, but please retain your gifts as the wedding was cancelled.
Number 1.
I got my license to marry people online. It's kinda cool. I was marrying this sweet couple and when I got to does anyone object this marriage? Someone did. The uncle of the groom. He stood up, said he objected because I love you more than your girlfriend does. Marry me instead. It was kinda weird. I am not going to lie.
Number 2.
I objected at my cousin's wedding. The dude had hit her multiple times. He was and is generally a douchebag. Every time I had ever seen him he was drunk, and my cousin who I was previously very close with quit talking much and suddenly became very clumsy, falling down and hitting her face on things a lot. I had no intention of going. Turned down being in the wedding party. Turned down going to the bachelorette party. My mother and aunt begged me to go over my objections. I told them why I didn't want to go. They made a bunch of excuses and told me it was just me being jealous. Ended up going, explicitly to object. The priest did the speak up or forever hold your peace. I stayed because the guy is an abusing pile of shit. Everything went silent. One of my cousins and my dad walked me out. The marriage continued. Nobody talked to me for about a year. Right after the dickhead got arrested for hitting her in the face with a hand mixer because she made something wrong. Turned out I was right. Yet they are still married even though he has been to jail twice now for beating her. Downside is my parents wouldn't talk to me for a long time. Now my mom apologized for not believing me.
Number 3.
At a friend's wedding in 2003 he was asked if he wanted to marry the bride first name last name. Without any pause he said no. Everyone was shocked, including the bride. It was like the world stopped turning for a second and dead silence together with severe tension was in the air. He then corrected, that he was there to marry correct first name, last name. The bride's first name has been a wrong one when he was asked, but the bride itself doesn't noticed, some guests did notice as well. The official then checked and it turns out he noted down the wrong first name, which would lead to them not being married if not corrected. They are happily married until today.
Number 4.
Many years ago, the wedding was at the bride's upscale residence. They had the rehearsal, and thought they had anticipated every possibility. When the question was asked it was too late to realize that nobody had thought to stop the cuckoo clock. Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. It was a good 10 minutes before the laughter died down enough for them to finish the ceremony. The bride, groom and officiant chuckled their way through the rest of the ceremony. They have been married for over 30 years.
Number 5.
Growing up, we went to a ton of crazy churches, including one very charismatic and dysfunctional one. The pastor's son, 17, had slept with his girlfriend, 14, and she was pregnant. She was our babysitter, and we loved her so much. Their parents decided the best way to fix their sin was to make them get married. She sobbed the entire wedding. It was heartbreaking even as a kid. He ended up leaving her when she was 19 and they had 4 kids. She had stopped formal schooling when she married to become a good wife and mother. Ugh. Makes my stomach hurt.
Number 6.
My cousin and her husband purposely had the priest skip that part because the groom's mom had been trying to cancel the wedding. She'd threatened not to come, she tried canceling venues, tried booking her own rehearsal party for only the groom's family, and started calling the bride's guests saying the wedding was cancelled. I was a bridesmaid and our bouquets were the size of basketballs. I had a clear view in case I had to throw my bouquet at her in distraction in case she did try to object at any point in the ceremony.
Number 7.
I saw one of sorts. Very small wedding with just family and a few of us close friends. The guy performing the marriage asked if anyone objected and then paused for what felt like forever, was probably like 45 seconds, then said, "Are you sure? Like really sure you don't have any objections?" All of us sat in awkward silence. Everyone knew it was a rough relationship but the couple had not listened to anyone's concerns. 3 years later they are still married although they were separated for most of it.
Number 8.
I was at my uncle's wedding back in the 90s. He was getting remarried and had 3 kids from a previous marriage. At the objection part, my cousin, who was his oldest son, yelled, "Don't do it, Dad." They went through with it but got divorced like 5 years ago. They were married 20-ish years though.
Number 9.
Wasn't necessarily an objection, but a friend of mine was getting married and his fiancée's mother wasn't invited. I do not know all the details of why, but from what I understood, she sort of dropped her as a child for a few years. Then when she heard she was getting married, she tried to show up. Anyways, the mom and her boyfriend show up and make a huge scene about how her daughter is getting married and she has a right to be there. She ends up getting pushed down the stairs by security because she was throwing punches at security trying to get into the chapel. It was a crazy experience.
Number 10.
Okay, my sister and her best friend went to a mutual friend's wedding and they told me this story. Everything was going normally and the bride walked down the aisle and it was all good. Then the officiator asked if anyone had any objections, and the best man came forward and just started roasting the bride like he held nothing back. So, the groom got really upset and was like, "Why are you insulting my wife?" So the best man answered, "She's not your wife yet." It went back and forth for a bit before the best man shouted, "I'm in love with you, Derek." The whole place went silent like in a movie. Then the maid of honor dragged the best man away and they continued on with the wedding like nothing happened.
Number 11.
The most dramatic objection came from a guy seated further back in a church filled with people. As an organist, I've witnessed innumerable weddings. He said the groom was still legally married to another woman in California, that a decree of divorce had not been finalized by the judicial system. Turns out the guy was correct. Some glitch in the process prevented the divorce from becoming official, even though the groom thought it had long been resolved. Apparently, the man who spoke at the East Coast wedding ceremony was related to the groom's wife, and the guy was intent on spoiling the occasion out of some bitterness he held toward the groom.
Number 12.
When the registrar was doing the whole "will you marry take you bill" bit, there was a loud shriek of "Bill." Paused the ceremony and everyone was looking round to find the source. The source was a small baby using this opportunity to speak one of their first proper words.
Number 13.
Commenter. My mother-in-law showed up to my wedding in a black funeral-type fundamentalist Mormon-looking dress in protest. She was supposed to wear purple, silver, or teal to match wedding colors, and had shown me 2 outfits she bought in those colors. But she got mad at me for not letting brother-in-law give the blessing at the rehearsal dinner because I wanted the actual pastor in attendance to do it, and threw a fit and threatened not to come to the wedding. She ended up coming, but in that funeral dress, and frowned in all the wedding pictures and pretty much ruined my wedding. Person B. Why didn't you toss her out when you saw what she was wearing? Commenter. I was in the changing room at the time she walked in. My maid of honor, who was my best friend, ran into the changing room and said probably way too loud, "Your husband's mother is here and she looks like a Mormon." I was like, OMG. No way hubby would have let me kick her out. He did not think she was doing anything wrong. He always thinks she is not being a bitch when she totally is. She is good at fooling him with her passive aggression. She told him she didn't like the purple or teal outfit and so she wore this dress instead. He bought that story. I can't display any wedding family photos because of how awful mother-in-law looks in them.
Number 14.
Commenter. My mom and I were on my spring break of my junior year in college. We were on a little 4-day cruise and loving life. On the first night, a man begins walking to a large fountain in the center of the dining area. Now this dining area was 3 levels with the top 2 cut out like a balcony so you could see all the way through. As this guy is dragging her up, she is resisting and shaking her head, trying not to make a scene. After he gets everyone's attention and you could hear a pin drop, he begins his speech. She says no. She flees. He follows. My mom and I couldn't help but wonder how the rest of the trip went, since it was only the first night, and we had assumed they were sharing a room. Person B. This is one of many reasons why I would never do a public proposal. Person C. Really, it should be down to what you're comfortable with. The thing is, when you ask, you should already know what the answer is going to be. If you're about to propose, and there's any doubt in your mind that the answer could be anything other than an enthusiastic yes, give it more time. I like the idea of the big romantic display like that because it gives a good memory to everyone else witnessing it. But, if the stakes are high, then don't do it. But it's marriage. The stakes are high. Only if you don't already know the answer. I proposed to my wife at Christmas dinner with her family, right after deep frying a turkey in their backyard. I burned a circle into their lawn. It was hella romantic and intimate. Of course, being married to her doesn't stop me from occasionally borrowing her ring and doing a big grandiose marriage proposal somewhere in public. I mean, sure, we're already married, but the people around us don't need to know that, and on the plus side, now they have a good story for their friends. And on the other plus side, it generally means I'm getting laid that night.
Number 15.
I was at the wedding of my mom's cousin Jay. When the guy asked if there was any objection, the mother of Jay said, "I never wanted my daughter to date such an asshole like him." Everyone started whispering and Jay was holding her tears back. I was something around 11 when that happened, still old enough to understand that Jay didn't want her mother there. The mother had to leave, and the ceremony continued. After that, I went to hug Jay. She was 20 at the time, really young. She started to tear up while hugging me. Imagine getting married, and your mother would talk shit about your future husband. When she was this young, she seemed to regret going that fast. They are still married, happy and healthy, but if I'm ever gonna get married, this is going to be my biggest fear.
Number 16.
Not an objection, but I was at a wedding. The priest gets to the objections. The 3-year-old daughter was the flower girl. Walks up the aisle, pulls the bride's dress and whispers something to her. Everyone was like, "Is the little girl objecting?" Nope. Apparently she told her mom she didn't feel good. That was about half a second before she threw up all over her. Make sure to share your personal story in the comments below and have the opportunity to be featured in a future video. Also, if you like these topics, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to continue seeing more content like this every day. See you next time.